Welcome, everyone. My name is Adam Grant McIntosh, and I'm joined by twin brothers, Jeff and John Fortson, of the infamous, the legendary Squad 5-0. And I'm totally stoked to be able to do this interview, and I know other fans are excited for it as well. So, John and Jeff, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right into the current day. Squad broke up back in 2005, but you've been doing occasional reunion shows since 2012, and sometimes with different lineups. But now, coming soon in 2021, you have a new EP, which I believe is 7 songs. So tell us what brought about the desire to write and record new music, and is that something that you ever thought you would do again as Squad 5-0?
Well, as far as the new music goes, it was just really, it was a labor of love by Chris Klein. He has like a home studio where he had started recording new stuff with 121 and a couple other bands that he was working with at the time. And maybe about a year and a half ago, he started pitching to me, probably to John too. I got pretty regular messages or text messages from him about maybe trying to record some new Squad stuff. And the last gig we played was at what was it, John? It was up in Illinois. It's a festival. I can't remember the name of the festival.
Audio feed.
Yeah,
we called it Squadio feed.
Yeah, we did call it Squadio feed. And it was just like a really good vibe, all the reunion stuff we played together was just so much fun, and there was like no egos involved. There was like no attitude. It was just a bunch of old friends getting together and playing some old songs that they had written a long time ago when they were just kids, and playing shows for fans who now had kids that was maybe the age they were when they first got into our band. So it was just kind of cool. It was a cool thing all around. Just really good vibes, really good chemistry between all the guys in the band. And so after a couple of shows with Five Iron, and then maybe one or two we booked on our own, and then do an audio feed, it just felt good. It felt like, hey, we'd like to do this as often as we can. I don't think any of us were trying to think of it as a career anymore, which also made it really awesome because you weren't stressing about paying the bills with it. And then Chris, just after audio feed, started regularly messaging me and just asking, hey man, I've got some ideas, do you want to hear them? And he just started sending me like little snippets of songs, like little pieces, and he would name them ridiculous things like Skinny Foot or something just ridiculous and send me the file. And musically it was just really awesome. And so we just started talking about it a little bit more. He started telling us about his studio and the gear and stuff that he had, and how really he could record anywhere. I think more than anything, that probably has a lot to do with why we decided to do some new stuff, is because you don't need to like rent out a studio. You don't need, like the best room. Like we got to have this room that just sounds this way. Because, now that everything is digital, we recorded the basic tracks and vocals for this new stuff. Apart from the drums and the overdubs and stuff. We recorded them in like a bedroom in a beach house on Tybee Island, Georgia. Nice. Just me, John, and Chris, coming together. And it was, if you want to give anyone credit, it's really Chris Klein. He just had a vision. He thought that we could make really cool music. He missed hanging out with us. We missed making music together. And so eventually we started meeting like this. We met over Zoom and over FaceTime, and I was on this porch. John was usually maybe in that bedroom. I don't know. And Chris was hanging out in the studio, and we would just sit and we would listen to the stuff he sent us. And then John and Chris on acoustic guitars would sort of hammer out parts, but it was like, it was delayed. So the two guitars never lined up. And at first, it was weird. We were figuring out how to do this over the phone and over the internet. And it was just some really fun nights, just the three of us hanging out via the interwebs and coming up with ideas for songs. And Chris pretty much had whole parts of songs done or ideas, at least the shape of songs. And then we would add in, John, like, did we add in some bass line that we were messing with even before Late News Breaking? I think we added one of that in and it became a song.
Yeah, it was, I think for Late News Breaking, we had about 30 ideas for different songs. So it was a bass line that I had written for that session, and we just couldn't figure out what to do with it. And then, 16 years later, roughly, it becomes a song. So
well, that's cool, because one of my questions was going to be if all the songs were brand new or if any of them were recycled from the past. So I guess there's at least a part there that you recycled. That's good.
Yeah, it's like some old, because everything starts out as an idea, like the self-titled squad and Late News Squad. There was just so many ideas, like bouncing back and forth, like snippets here, snippets there, and then snippets of songs would become one song. And that's kind of what happened here too. It's like Chris had an idea, and then it would float into like an idea that I had, and then he would have a version of something, and then we're hammering out, like, over FaceTime, like different ideas of like, I'm feeling this. And then before you know it, we've got like a good outline with like a bridge there. And then we can use this for the chorus kind of thing, just things that come to you. And he would have to remind me of like, I go, so what did I just play? Because let's use that. And he would go, oh, you did this. I'm like, okay, all right, let's do that. But I mean, I was playing on an acoustic guitar with 5 strings, I think. I think I was missing the B string, and we just kind of hammered it out. I don't even think we were both in the same tuning, but it was close enough.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
It's art, right?
Well, I can't wait to hear the EP. Everybody go follow the Philadelphia Recording Service on Instagram. That's band member Chris Klein's label. He's the one who's putting this out. Also, they're coming out with a zine soon, right? In honor of Squad's 25th anniversary. So that's pretty exciting. And people can keep up with the news there from the Instagram page. What can you tell us regarding music for the EP? You've released nothing so far. There's no singles or anything for us to listen to just yet. So can you give us an idea of what it sounds like? Where on the Squad spectrum would it be? Ska, punk, glam, rock and roll? Which album does it sound closest to, maybe?
Yes.
All the above?
I think it, I mean, Jeff's voice is pretty much Squad. And Jeff's voice is pretty much Squad. So, I mean, it's not like it's going to be techno or anything, like way out there. But I mean, you would listen to it and go, "Oh yeah, that's Squad Photo." So awesome. It's a little bit of everything. Like we didn't really put any
we didn't restrict ourselves.
Yeah.
When you especially like the first song that we have queued up to be the opener, like I was talking to Chris the other night, and the song is called "Daddy-O, Can't You See?" But not like Daddy-O, can't you see? Like Daddy-O, like 50s people used to call each other Daddy-O. But that was just Chris made that sound phonetically in the chorus. I'm like, I like it. Let's just keep it as Daddy-O. And if people don't get it, they don't get it. But, I think it's right there in the vein of like the Ramones, hey, Daddy-O. But yeah, so like I told Chris, like when I hear that song, it's like if I want to be reintroduced to this band I haven't heard since 2005, new music at least since 2004 or whatever, this is what I would want to hear, as like, as being as far removed from it as I can be without thinking, because it's always hard for me to listen to our stuff. Like someone asked me one time, like, so which Squad album do you listen to the most? And I'm like, I don't. Like when I listen to our stuff, all I hear is the things I wish were better, or the things that aren't like, just right. But when I listen to this stuff, like it's still fresh and it's new and it's fun. And Chris is usually putting up, sending us some sort of new mix or some sort of new, like, hey, I tried this thing here. What do you think? Sort of things to listen to. And I haven't got tired of listening to it yet. And I think each song goes together. Like when you hear the 7 songs together, it sounds like a cohesive unit, but also each song kind of has its own personality and maybe borrows from different musical genres. You know, the opening track is just straight ahead, just, you know, balls to the wall, rock and roll. You know, in the vein of like the Clash, and it's got this ripping solo from Chris in it, and big chanting chorus. And that's the one thing we said, is like, you know, these songs have the squad parts. You know, we started talking, what are the squad parts, you know? Yeah, so when you hear it, it sounds like Squad 5-0. It doesn't sound like Squad 5-0 trying to make modern music. It sounds like Squad 5-0 writing songs that they enjoy and that they were excited about. And I mean, honestly, I'm just saying I'm really, really excited about it. You know, we're not trying to change the world.
Nice.
we're just trying to make some fun music that people who like our band will like, and I think they will.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I think so too. What was it like, Jeff, writing lyrics again, maybe for the first time in a long time? Were you the primary lyricist?
I did write the majority of the lyrics, but the really cool thing, and to answer your question, it was really tough because I haven't sat down and tried to put my thoughts into lyrics in a long time. And, you know, I'm 45 now. I guess I was 44 at the time, but what's the difference? It's the same. But you know, just at a very different place, you know, not really writing songs like We Are the Youth and things like that, because not so much the youth anymore, even though my stomach declares it. But it was cool. I mean, especially like against the backdrop of, you know, recent history with the pandemic and the lockdown. And so I think a lot of like some of the lyrics sort of center around that kind of stuff. More or less, there's not really, I wouldn't say a real political slant on it either way. There's just a more like, you know, there's some songs where like a song called Lose My Mind, where the whole idea is like just being so stressed out about the news every day at the time, or being locked into these 4 walls and not being able to leave, and just feeling like you're about to lose your mind. And like the anecdote to that being able to go out and dance. Like the whole idea is, if I don't dance tonight, I'll lose my mind. Like I need a release from, you know, the feeling of the walls closing in on me and being trapped, you know, inside. And that was actually that was an idea that came from Chris. And that one song, I think we all wrote on, didn't we, John? Like,
yeah. We all wrote the lyrics.
Completed lyric.
Yeah. It was cool because like the 3 of us there in that, you know, beach house, it was collaborative. We were all staying in the same place. And then, you know, Chris's wife and kids were there. My wife and kids were there, and they would leave for the day. And then me and Jeff and Chris would just be like, okay, what are we going to attack today? You know, like, but it was a collaborative process of it. And I think that's what made it so fun. Like we were sitting on this king size bed in like the master bedroom where we had the studio set up, and we're just there like hashing out ideas. And I don't know, just made it fun, you know. It was very organic, and whenever we needed to, right outside was like the back porch that overlooked this tidal creek with all these oyster beds, and you know, we'd just go out there and talk. So it wasn't like there was any pressure to do anything. It was like, so it just made it like very easy.
And I think like lyrically also, it's like there was like a lot of influences. There's definitely, I guess, more like the, you know, state of the world sort of lyrics that are in there too. And I mean, there's also like a good spackling of 1984 by George Orwell, which I had been listening to on audiobook all summer. And like the second song on the album is called We Are the Dead, Darling, which is directly inspired by a line from 1984. And
okay, so Jeff, you've done a ton of podcasts in recent years, and all of them are great. You know, everybody go check those out. But I always walked away from them feeling like there was so much more that could be talked about. So the hope I have for this interview is that maybe it digs a little bit deeper than the others, that maybe it walks down some nostalgic roads that you guys haven't been down in a while, and really just for it to be a comprehensive fan interview, you know, and from the perspective of a fan who's followed you guys, nearly from the beginning. With that said, I've also solicited some fan questions. So throughout the course of the interview, I'll be throwing those out as well. Okay. All right. Well, so there's no better place to start than at the very beginning. And I'm talking pre-Squad 5.0. I'm talking about BMX.
Okay.
BMX, which as I understand was the band immediately before Squad that you guys were writing original music for. I know you had bands throughout high school, cover bands and stuff like that. But BMX was the one that you were writing original music for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that was the first like punk band we had. We had some other bands we wrote original music for, but they weren't like in the punk thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask
more...
what the style was. Was it punk, ska?
BMX was just, just punk.
Four-chord punk.
Yeah. We were so good. We used
Sex Pistols.
Yeah, it was very Sex Pistols.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys had you guys did some recording as BMX, right? I've been trying to track down that tape for years with no success.
I think my dad has it.
All right. Well, I'll try to get in touch with your dad.
Yeah, my dad probably has like 2 or 3 at least.
That's awesome. Well, BMX was Jeff, John, and your friend Guy Weaver on drums.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
So what ended up happening with BMX that transitioned into Squad 5.0? Was it just a drummer change and a name change, or do you consider them 2 totally different bands?
They're 2 totally different bands. I don't know. So, gosh, I got to think back to when I was that age. We had all just started college, and Guy, he was 2 years ahead of us, I believe. And he and I worked at the same delicatessen. That was our job, Eli's Deli. Shout out to Eli Caritassus. Guy was ready to settle down, thinking about having a family and stuff. And I just remember one day in political science class and just thinking I'm just going to start a new band. I don't know with who, but I'm just going to start a new band. I don't want to do this. Don't want to go to school right now. And I told Jeff, and Jeff's like, well, I'm going to be in it with you. So then that meant that BMX was not going to be anymore. And then I had to kind of tell Guy, but Guy and I are really close to this day. I think everything worked out for the best.
Gotcha.
But
I think
it was very difficult at the time, So so we're going to start a new band, and then we knew some surfer kid who was pretty good at air drums. His name was Justin Kohut. And you want to be a drummer? We're going to start a new band. He's like, yeah. I think Jeff and him washed windows together, right?
Yeah. And he was just always around. He was a fan of BMX, and he was just always around. So made sense.
I mean, he actually wasn't the best drummer, but it worked enough for the early Squad stuff, like punk rock.
Right.
So yeah, we started that band, and we're like, we need a name. I believe we were at the Wendy's restaurant on Waters Avenue. Across from the hospital that Jeff and I were born in, and we're trying to think of band names. And one of our friends, Steve Cefalo, had a friend named Mike, I believe his name was, that was in a band from Arkansas called Sufi Nun Squad. And I just like the idea of squad because it felt like a family. So I'm like, how about something Squad? And that made Jeff think of Mod Squad, and which in turn made him think of Hawaii 5.0. He goes, what about Squad 5.0? And
boom.
There's
and
your
we're
name.
Stuck with it.
Yes, we are.
Very good.
We did.
I would definitely say that it was definitely 2 very different bands. It was clear that Guy was sort of in a part of his life where he just got engaged. He was wanting to get married, and John and I were like, no, we want to sleep on couches and drive a, you know, broken down van around the world or whatever. And so when, you know, BMX broke up, is basically John and I telling the guy we wanted to start a different band. You know, we're gonna bring in this kid named Justin, and it was a little weird for a while. But I will say, like John said, Guy is still, I consider, one of my best friends. His daughter was like my daughter's maid of honor in our wedding. One of his sons was in the wedding. And actually, I think I told you before we started recording, Adam, that we have some friends coming in tomorrow, and that's actually a guy and his wife and one of their sons. They're on spring break.
Perfect.
They're both educators, so they're on spring break and coming to visit. But the funny thing too is, John, do you remember that we when we were trying to like start playing outside of Savannah, because there was really nothing going on in Savannah, we would always go to shows up in Atlanta, up in Marietta, it's a suburb of Atlanta, this club called the Pterodactyl. And one day the Pterodactyl announced, you know, when we were up there for a show, they announced they were having a battle of the bands, and the bands should just submit their demos. And so I remember us mailing the BMX demo to the guys at the Pterodactyl, and they got back in touch with us and said, hey, we want you in the Battle of the Bands. But by the time the Battle of the Bands happened, BMX had broken up. So Squad showed up in their place and be like, yeah, same band, we just changed our name. And that's when it started, because the Pterodactyl is where everything Squad began.
Yep.
Very good.
It's where we grew up. It's where we cut our teeth.
All right, so you form a Squad 5-0. It's now 1996. You've got Justin Kohut on drums, as you just mentioned, John. You're doing the full-fledged ska punk thing. You release a demo tape called Skankum Dano Cop Rock Case 1. And now only a few songs from that demo would get reused later on What I Believe. So, you know, you had a ton of material that you never used again. And so I'm just curious, what was it like in those early days as you guys were writing songs? You were just writing song after song after song, and you just had this wealth of material to choose from?
Like when we first started writing, like every song was about 30 to 45 seconds long. So it was more of like a 7 seconds kind of thing. And, you know, as it went on, you know, like we started like playing with more, because I mean, Jeff never really played, you know, like a true like ska guitar. It was more, I guess it would be more of like a Tim Armstrong, Operation Ivy kind of thing, like not totally clean, but a little bit distorted kind of thing. So it came along, and then we're like, you know what, that's cool. Like we were digging it, and it actually extended the songs, because all our songs were so fast and so short. So we're like, oh, these making the songs longer. And there's way more songs that weren't on Skankum Dano that we had gone through. Like some of them were like one verse, one chorus, one verse, one chorus, we're out. So
yeah. Actually, in that demo was sent to Tooth and Nail Records, because we wanted to be on Tooth and Nail so bad, and we actually got a very nice
handwritten letter,
handwritten rejection letter from Bill Power.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I wish we could have kept it. Man, we should have kept that.
It was beautiful. It was so well written. It was so well written.
Did Bill Power remember you guys later when you became more well known and got signed?
I don't know. Did he, John?
I'm not sure, but I know that
pals with Bill.
Yeah, I know that he and I have talked about it a lot. I'm like, man, awesome. It was such a nice letter. I couldn't even be mad.
It was really.
It was mailed to my parents. It was mailed to my parents' house. It was awesome.
So John, I've always been curious about what your role was, if any, in the songwriting process back then. Was it all Jeff, or were you helping with the music and lyrics too?
I didn't help with the lyrics, but musically, yeah. I like Jeff would have an idea, and then, or I would have like some ridiculous bass riff, and he would put chords around it.
No, I'd be more like, what are the root chords to that? Tell me the root chords. I just played the root chords.
Like Parental Guidance off of What I Believe, and what was the other one? United We Stand.
Parental Guidance was on Fight the System.
Oh yeah, that was
second album, John. Come on, man.
Sorry. Yeah, Parental Guidance. That was one, and that was one where he goes, "What's the root notes?" And then United We Stand off the first record, and it's like, where are we going from here?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Boom, 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 boom.
I get so mad at myself. I'm like, especially because, like Jeff said, like I don't really sit down and like listen to like any of our records for the most part. The main time I do is if we're gonna play a show, then I'm like, okay, and I'll put the songs in order, like on a playlist, so that I can sit down and
Practice.
relearn them. Yeah, and when it gets to the the old stuff, I go, why so fast? Why so fast? Like my arms are cramping, like everything.
Okay, so we have our first fan question, and it's to Jeff. Jeff, do you still have your guitar that was covered in Yoo-Hoo stickers?
That is a great question. And the answer is no. I actually left that guitar with a good friend of mine named Rob Schwartz, who has just recently moved to Puerto Rico. But before he moved, he was wondering if I wanted it back. It is now free of all the Yoo-Hoo stickers, but he was trying to, like, I guess, refurbish it for me and just never got around to it. He said he was going to. John, did he ever ask you if you wanted that stuff? Like he would bring it to you or something?
He asked if I wanted it. I'm like, yeah, of course. And then but I don't know.
I have no idea where it is now. It was like the original Squad guitar, that mustard yellow SG. I had a lot of other guitars in the bands before Squad, but I think the mustard yellow SG might have come about in BMX, but it was for sure the first Squad guitar. And we even had a song called Yoo-Hoo. Yeah, I think it was a Squad song, like an early Squad song. But
it was on Steak and Banner.
Yeah, it's on Skankum. How can you not remember this song Yoo-Hoo, man? All the lyrics were from the ingredients on the bottle. Anything that was printed on the label, those are all the lyrics of the song.
That is true. Everything on the label made it into the song.
Creative.
Those are the only lyrics in the song.
He was holding it up while he was singing a song.
We had vision.
Okay, so you eventually signed to Bulletproof Music and put out your full-length debut, What I Believe, and that was in early 1997. Jeff, you've told the story before about how Bulletproof Music was basically created for Squad 50. They basically created the label in order to put you guys out, and so that had to be a great honor for you guys, right? I mean, regardless of the financial conflicts that would come later. I'm sure that was a pretty big deal at the time.
Yeah, we thought it was. Well, I mean, we thought it was great, of course. Like here was these guys that. I mean, it was Marty Bush who ran the Pterodactyl. He had started a label called Gray Dot back in the day, and he was actually like the first guy that sort of discovered Third Day. That was like his big claim to fame, and I think Gray Dot maybe put out Third Day's first album. But, when they opened because they used to do this thing called the Strand Theater, which was in downtown Marietta. And then they lost, I guess, the lease on that place. And I ended up out in the suburbs, sort of, in like a shopping mall, and to open the Pterodactyl. And so, that's when Tooth and Nail was just really starting to hit, 94, 95, 96. And, they would bring all the Tooth and Nail bands through that club. And Marty liked this, and I guess he liked the live show enough to sort of start making us like the opening act for all the Tooth and Nail bands that came through, or like the Insiders or Five Iron Frenzy or any of those bands that kind of came through Atlanta and came through the Pterodactyl. POD, he would put us as the opening act on, and he saw the crowd reaction, and we were starting, I think, pretty close to selling out the Pterodactyl ourselves when we would do headlining shows. And I think he saw potential there, and so decided to start a more, I guess, punk rock or alternative leaning label that he decided to call Bulletproof. And we were their premiere act. They put the label together to release our first album, but I think at the same time, Spudgun, which was another punk band that we were like just tremendous friends with in that scene, they were in the studio. We were actually in the same studio at the same
We're
time
switching
recording our
days, yeah.
debut albums. I guess it was flattering. I don't know if we really even had like the self-awareness or perspective back then to really think like, hey, wow, this is kind of cool. I think that, you know, we were just like, oh, wow, we get to make an album. Oh, cool. Oh, and now we have a van and we're going to be at Cornerstone this year. Like, it just all kind of started happening. And I don't really even know if we had time to sit down and think about it.
Well, I've got to say, Bulletproof Music had a great ear for Christian music. You know, you guys, Spudgun, Johnny Respect, Dear Ephesus. I loved all those bands, and it was really cool that you guys were all friends and you toured together and all of that. And speaking of which, I did want to ask about Spudgun. This is kind of a rabbit trail, but in those early days, you guys, you know, seemed really tight. Spudgun even sang about you guys on their CD. And now Spudgun, of course, would change into World Against World and various metal bands. But one of the members, Josh, would go on to form Royal Thunder, which is a pretty well-known band in the secular industry right now. And I'm just curious, what happened to the friendship with those guys, or have you stayed in touch this whole time?
I think we keep up with each other on like social media and stuff like that. I mean, even with my closest friends, I don't know how much in touch I stay. Like John and I talk through text messages every couple weeks, and or keep up with each other on, you know, social media. Same thing with Chris. And then every once in a while I'll talk to Justin out in Arizona. But I mean, I still like, when you even mentioned Spudgun, there's just like a very special place in my heart for those guys and for the kind of scene that we both came out of up there in Atlanta, and just so many great memories with those guys, not even just being on stage with them, but just like hanging out with them and being friends with them was just like, just some of the most epic. And like, I mean, if you're going to make like a teen comedy about mischief, those were the days to really focus on. I mean, they were just so much stupid things we did with involving an actual spud gun or bottle rockets or stealing state flags from poles. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm employed by the state. But
I think you're
like,
fine now. It's been long enough.
it was just great.
Our state flag was stolen.
What do they call that?
Well, I think it's interesting.
Many state flags are stolen, I believe, not by us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have heard that many state flags were taken by people we may have known.
Well, the reason I wanted to ask about Spudgun and Royal Thunder, I just think it's interesting that two obscure punk bands from Georgia on Bulletproof Music both end up getting mainstream success. You know, Squad ends up getting signed to Capitol, and then Spudgun turns into Royal Thunder. So I just think that connection needed to be noted in history somewhere.
Those guys will forever have a special place in our hearts, for sure.
Okay, so shortly after what I believe is released, you start looking for a new drummer because Justin Kova decided to join the military. Was
Join
that a
the
shock
Navy.
to you? The Navy. Okay, was that a shock to you guys? Was full-time music just not what he wanted to do, or what?
I think Justin was just he was like really young. I don't think he knew what he wanted to do. He was a good bit younger than John and I. I mean, we were young too, but I think Justin was like 17 when he joined the band, John. Maybe 19. I don't know how old we were.
He was homeschooled, so it was.
Hey, what's that?
No, my kids are homeschooled, but my kids are homeschooled. But I don't know how old he was because I couldn't tell you what grade he was in because I had no idea.
True.
That's right.
True.
But
he was surfing most of the time.
Yeah, he was surfing and washing windows. So I assume he may have been done with school. I have no idea, or at least high school. But yeah, Justin. I mean, he was a surfer kid. Then he turned it into like a skinhead, like pro racial unity skinhead. So it's just kind of like, looking for an identity, and then I believe he found it in the Navy, and. Yeah, so then it left us like looking for a drummer, and then we had our auditions.
Yeah, but John, do you remember? Like, it was like he's like, guys, I'm enlisting in the Navy, and we're like, okay, that I mean, when one perspective, it was awesome, but another was like, well, we need a drummer. What are we gonna do? But then we played like this festival in Michigan or somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And then he was like, maybe
Yeah,
I'm not leaving the band. And we were just like, no,
Yeah,
you're
we're
leaving
like,
the band.
you're leaving the band.
because We're not gonna play. You're in the band. You're out the band.
Did you guys stay in touch with Justin at all, or do you know what he's up to nowadays?
No idea.
No idea.
I don't. I think I. No, I have no idea what he's doing.
Gotcha.
Maybe like 2003 or so, maybe 2004 or 5, somewhere in there. I had heard that, you know, I'd seen his sister and it's like his mom, and they said he was in San Diego in the Navy. So
Okay.
maybe he's still in the Navy.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you end up getting Jason Anderson as your drummer.
Jason Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
Anderson.
Jason Michael Anderson, right?
Yes.
Yes. Professional name.
A guy from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Do you remember how you ended up getting Jason?
Yeah, we played a show, like one of the few times we traveled outside of like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee area. I think we played up at like up in Nashville, and then we ended up driving straight to Fayetteville to play the show that some kids had booked us on. And he was in one of the bands, playing drums for one of the bands that we played with, and he was really good. And I think that's maybe what started the juices flowing. Is that the way you remember it, John?
Well, yeah, but Jimmy tried out originally.
Jimmy Rocketship?
Yes. So we were at the Weaver family house, Josh and Ryan Weaver's family house up in the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, and
Spudgun boys.
Yeah. So, and they had like a whole little basement area to themselves, and Jimmy like knew like Lewis and like people in Deer Ephesus, and so he's like, "Hey, I want to try out for drums." I'm like, okay, so kind of spent the weekend there, and then Jimmy came down, and we ran through a few songs with him, and he did all right on some.
He tried real hard.
Yeah, he did really well on some, and then until it came to time for a fill, and then it kind of like
fell apart.
Just kind of like got offbeat and different things. But Jeff and I love Jimmy. Like, we love him, but he can't be the drummer. And then Jason Michael Anderson had reached out, and like, so he came to Georgia and he tried out, and obviously we're like, okay, yeah, he's going to be the one. And then we drove down to the Refuge in Tampa, Florida, and we played a show, and Jimmy was there, and Jason was our drummer at the time. We told Jimmy, we don't think it's going to work out. And we hadn't started, like, we were gearing up for like our first tour or whatever. So, Jason played the show with us, and, we were tighter than we ever been. He was way tighter than Justin and a way better drummer.
Right.
So I remember I was outside of the Refuge, and I was talking to Jimmy, and he's like, "Hey man, I was just thinking, I think God's put it on my heart. It's like, I feel like I should just be with you guys. What if I come on the road with you like a roadie or tour manager?" And I jumped at it because Jason Anderson is a cool guy, but doesn't vibe on the same level as Jeff and I did. And I'm like, yes, Jimmy in the band, It's going to be 3 people, because Jeff and I with just Jason by ourselves wasn't going to be fun. Bring Jimmy aboard, fun. So I'm like,
John,
tour manager, let's do this.
I was just going to say, Jimmy actually tried out for Spudgun, and they were like,
yes,
he's not right for us, but you guys should give him a try. And we gave him a try, and he tried hard.
It was great that he was on because it was the 4 of us, and it was awesome. I mean, we wrote a song about him.
Yeah, man.
The story behind Jason Michael Anderson, I believe it was Aaron Imsall who booked that show in Fayetteville. He was in the band with Jason. They were really good friends. And so I think that's how you guys got there. And I think the band was called Earl's Revenge or something.
Yes,
I think you're right.
I think you're right.
And by the way, Aaron became the president of the Squad 50 fan club.
Yes, he did.
He did indeed.
So shout out to Aaron.
Hey, Aaron.
And Jason Jason also had his own record label, Let's Jet Records.
Let's Jet Records.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he played in numerous bands at different times, like 238, The Excuses, Two Timer, and several other local bands in Arkansas.
Jason also had his own Squad 50 merchandise.
Oh, yeah? What's the story on that?
Unbeknownst to us.
You don't know this story?
I don't
This
think
is
so.
great.
Oh, it's awesome.
Great.
Like
John,
while he
you
was
tell
in
the
the
story.
band?
While he was in
yeah.
the band. Oh,
We
yeah.
showed up to like a New Year's Eve show in like I don't know. We were near maybe I think we're in Fort Collins, right?
We're in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we like set our merch up, and then Jason's like setting up his Let's Jet record stuff next to the squad stuff, and that's fine because he's doing his thing. But then he had like patches. Remember how kids would buy patches, like the canvas patches and so on? And the patches said Youth in Unity, which were our tattoos, but he was selling them. And like we weren't getting any money, and we're like, those are like squad. It's like, it's not squad merchandise. It's Let's Jet. I'm like, that's mine and John's tattoos. Like, I don't know. John, maybe you can. I'm gonna be right back. John, explain it real quick.
Oh no, Jeff explained it perfectly. So I'm like, okay, what are you doing? And I mean, he was making all this scratch on the side, you know. And we're like he's competing for money that we're trying to get in the band that he's in for our stuff. Like, okay.
We ended up like docking his. Sorry, I had to get another beverage. We ended up docking
yeah,
his per diem. We're like, we're not going to give you
per
per diem because you're making money off our patches. I mean, your patches. But I will say this, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this. But Jason does a little podcast, and he actually contacted me maybe 2 years ago and interviewed me for his podcast. And I mean, I think he's like, you know, the Lord had worked on him a lot, you know. And I mean, he was a great guy. He was just a little bit different than mine and John's mentality. But we're not. I mean, you probably tell because the band broke up, but we're not really entrepreneurs. And he definitely had like an entrepreneurial spirit. But it was really cool reconnecting with him a couple years ago on his podcast, and just to see how kind of like, you know, he had humbled himself, you know, out a little bit, and like just was just real down to earth and easy to talk to. Not that he wasn't when he was in the band, but it was definitely just two different wavelengths we were on. But I will say, like, it was really cool reconnecting with him a couple years ago.
All right, so you have a new drummer now. You're touring on What I Believe, and you guys have almost instant success that year. In 1997, HM Magazine voted you as favorite new artist for that year. I think it was CCM Magazine that listed you in the top 4 ska bands with the Supertones, you know, Five Iron, Insiders. What was that like for you guys to experience that kind of notoriety right away?
I think we were probably maybe just a little bit naive about it. Like, we're just like, oh, well, this is how it happens. You make an album and then you're just sort of famous and you just do this forever. You never not do this. You know, you make an album, you tour, you make an album, you tour. And I mean, it was just that first year, especially, was just, I mean, I don't know, John, I don't know how you look back on it, but I just back on it with just like the most like sense of wonder. It really was like the wonder years, you know, like just this amazing showing up the Cornerstone and having like, you know, we played underground stage. What was that? Like 1,000, 1,500 kids in that tent yelling your lyrics back at you. Like that has happened to us to some degree at the Pterodactyl, but I mean, not to the extent of like Cornerstone or like showing up to Cornerstone. And I was just walking through the campground and some random kid like goes, "Hey, aren't you Jeff from Squad 50?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he's like, "Dude, you want to come eat hot dogs with us at our campsite?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And it was just like, that was just, you know, I'd never seen this kid. I didn't know him from Paul, you know, but he invites me to eat hot dogs with him and his friends. They're like, "Oh, you're Jeff from Squad 50." And I'm like, how do people in Illinois know I'm Jeff from Squad? You know, it was just like sort of surreal. We had gone to Cornerstone the previous year just as, you know, fans. And I guess we'd always hoped we'd end up playing there someday, but I don't think we had any inkling that it would be a year later, and you know, we'd be out there playing in front of thousands of people. Pretty surreal.
I remember walking through, you know, that first year that we played Cornerstone, so at 97, and kids coming up going, "Aren't you Jeff from Squad 5's brother?"
There you go.
And he was Jeff from Squad 5's brother.
And at that point, you knew you made it, right?
I'm like,
That's
I'm
awesome.
doing something right.
I play the bass.
Yeah, and in addition to the success you were having, you also had some controversy right away with the word "sucks" printed on the back of your CD artwork. One of your songs, "Our State Flag Sucks."
Wasn't
the
aware
artwork was
that that was
actually the artwork was redone with new pictures with Jason, even though he wasn't on the album.
Yeah.
But the song title was changed to just "Our State Flag."
Yep.
I'm just curious, you know, what were you guys thinking back then when you hear the news that they're changing it?
I was like, man, this sucks. Exactly what I thought. I just thought that like that was probably our first like introduction to like, oh, this is how this works. Like
Sure.
when you're in like the Christian industry, this is how, you know, it's about like, you know, certain like faux pas or certain like I guess sacred cows that you didn't kick against, or not even that the word sucks does it. I don't think John, were you aware that that was like a hot button issue? Like, I don't think I knew that was like something bad. And we're from the deep South in the Bible Belt, and to us, it wasn't bad. I do remember the first time, John, I don't know if you're in the room for this or not. I was in the kitchen, and the first time I said "sucks" in front of my mom, and I remember her saying, "Why don't you just put the F on it?" And I was like, "Why, Mom? You want me to say that for sucks? Man, this for sucks." And I just remember her not being very impressed by my sense of humor. I thought I was hilarious.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be the last time that you would have an artwork change, nor the last time you would have lyric controversies either. That trend would follow you to the very end, and we'll get to some of that later. Jeff, John, any standout songs for you guys on What I Believe? When you think back, you know, any personal favorites from that album?
I mean, I love "We Are the Youth."
It's got to be like, yep. Yeah, What I Believe, of course, the title track, We Are the Youth, Side by Side. These are the songs that when we got back together in our 40s that we decided to put into the set list, you know. I think those three songs really hold a lot to us. I mean, we would probably never play it again, but Nice to Meet You is a pretty big bop. I mean, let's just admit, it's catchy, it's hooky. It sounds like a bunch of dogs barking in the chorus.
Did you used to say that was your worst song ever written?
Perhaps. There might be some that rival it.
But it's so fun.
It is fun.
Sure.
It's such a fun
so
song.
much fun. The kids were having fun. I think United, of course, right? United's kind of iconic on that album.
I think No One is a great song.
I think No One is probably a standout on that album.
I think No One was one of the early songs that we wrote for that album.
Yeah,
or
that
that would
song's
become
actually
that album.
That song's about Guy. Like Guy, you know, us asking Guy to leave the band and the weirdness that kind of followed that. And so sort
No
of
one can tear us apart.
Guy, you know, saw you yesterday, man. I felt the power of Christ that binds us. But this whole idea of like we're friends and we're in this awkward situation, but
we should
we're both
try to play
believers.
that one live again. That was always a jammer live. I love playing that song.
Yeah,
absolutely. You should do that.
You've convinced me.
Okay. Good conference. Adam
good
concurs.
conference. Good.
Hey,
good conference.
I can say I was a part of it. That's great. So let's fast forward then to 1998 when Fight the System
so much fun.
came out.
Yeah.
Fight the System was a phenomenal follow-up to What I Believe. It blew What I Believe out of the park, in my opinion.
So.
Better songs, better production, with the great Aaron Sprinkle
Yes.
Yeah.
as producer. You guys had organ on some songs. Aaron added
Yeah.
guitar solos to some songs, and so that was just perfect. What was it like working with Aaron? And had he ever worked with a ska band before? How did he treat you guys during that process?
I don't think he had ever worked with like a ska band, but the thing that drew us to Aaron was when we heard What I Believe back, it didn't sound like us live. The drums sounded really thin, and like, I don't know, the snare was almost like unlistenable. And Jason, of course, Jason Michael Anderson was like a much better drummer than Justin, and that's not anything to Justin. Justin was a very suitable drummer, very good drummer. But of course, Jason just could do crazy things. I mean, we could, go from the fast punk stuff into just like a ska breakdown or into a hardcore breakdown just effortlessly because he was just so good at the drums. And but what drew us to Aaron was that first MXPX album, Poking At Ya. Aaron had produced that, and it was so raw, but we loved the way it sounded. Like, remember, John, we were just like, man, this just sounds so good. It's so like raw. It's so like gritty. And we told Aaron when we finally, I don't even think we talked to him until the day we arrived in Seattle and he picked us up at the airport. We're like, yeah, dude, we picked you because of Poking At Ya. And he's like, I'm embarrassed by that album. And we're like, what? No, it's the best. It's the best. And he was just like, he just couldn't believe that that's why we picked him. And we're like, no, we love it. Like, it's a great punk album. Like, it's just so raw. The guitars just have like an edge and they cut. And so really, he didn't even really know what we sounded like before we met him. He just knew that our label contacted him. He had an opening, we had an opening, and we flew from LA up to Seattle to record. And I remember us playing the stuff for him. He's like, okay. Can you play me some bands that you like the way their album sounds, maybe that are in the similar vein to you? And so we played him like the first Suicide Machines album, and then we played him the second Suicide Machines album. He's like, oh, I get it. I get what's happening here. Like, and he just started talking about the sounds he was going to get and stuff. But John, do you remember that, riding with him in the car and playing him the Suicide Machines, and him going like, I get it. I get it. I get it.
Well, so there are so many good songs on Fight the System, but I want to talk specifically about Kevin's song. I'm not sure how many fans know that song's about the late great Kevin Glass, former bass player for 238. And it's a great song. And I've always been curious how close you guys were to him. Any thoughts on Kevin or what it was like writing that song?
Yeah, like, oddly enough, like I had only met Kevin once. 238's merchandise booth just happened to be right next to our merchandise booth at Tom Fest 97, our first year up there. And so Kevin would be selling the merch. He wasn't even in the band. I think he was just filling in. No, he wasn't in 238. He was playing for another band. What band was he with, John? He played in 238, but he was filling in for another.
He was filling in for a hardcore band.
I was at the merch table on and off. We were all at the merch table on and off. And so I just struck up conversations with Kevin, and he was easy to talk to. He struck up a conversation with me, and we sort of hung out off and on the entire festival at the merch table, and sometimes not at the merch table. But yeah, just got real conversational, just talked about, silly things, but also talked about some really like deep spiritual things. And yeah, you know how festivals are, man. Like, you make these festival friends that you didn't know before you got there, and all of a sudden now you're festival friends. And they were leaving at night. I think we were going to leave the next morning. They decided to leave that night. And I was at the Joy Electric show, and they were killing it, of course. And he actually came in to find me in the show to say goodbye. And I remember saying goodbye to him and giving him a hug and saying, hey, let's stay in touch. Alabama's not that far from Georgia. Florida's not that far from Georgia. And then he left. And then, of course, I think it was like the next day after we left the festival, we were staying in Portland for the night, I think. And we got news at the hotel. It's like, hey, those guys got in a van accident last night. And Kevin was thrown from the van and he died. I just remember it like hitting me so hard. I'd only known him for like a couple of days. But I just remember like it just like hitting me like in that hotel room, like, man, like you just really don't know. You don't know. The last time I saw that guy, I was having the time of my life at a Joy Electric show. He was hugging me goodbye. And then, hours later, he went on to be with the Lord. And I don't know, it just really, I guess, made a mark on me and sat down when we were writing new songs for because like I said, that was 97. So when we started writing the new stuff for Fight the System, I just chose, it's like, I feel like I want to put down my thoughts on paper. And that's, I think the music was probably just what the music was. And I sort of crafted the words of the song to go with the music.
Well, 238's Missing You Dearly album was dedicated to him, but I don't know of any other band other than Squad that wrote a song about him. So I've just always thought that was really cool and a great testimony of his life. I wanted to ask about that. Okay, an interesting addition on Fight the System was the introduction of Jimmy Rocketship, who we've already brought up and already talked about. But he was your roadie at the time. Tour manager, would that be a proper term, or
he was definitely the tour. He was definitely the tour manager.
Gotcha. And this was interesting because you treated Jimmy as a band member. In the Fight the System artwork, he's in some of the band photos. He's credited as a member, and you even wrote a song about him, of course.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty neat concept to me, including the tour manager as a member. And so, what motivated you guys to do that? Because not most bands do.
I mean, he was a member of the band as far as I was concerned.
Right. I mean, if you think of the band being as like an amalgamation or like a combination of all these different personalities that create like a certain culture or a certain like I don't know, I always call it a spirit. Like I always feel like when Squad is at its best, there's a certain spirit to the band. There's like a spirit that is positive and uplifting and inclusive and mischievous. And I feel like when Squad is at its best, that's like what's going through us. The music is the music, but like the spirit of the band, the attitude of the band, the oomph of the band, I guess, is what's created by its members together connecting with a crowd, right? Mm-hmm. And Jimmy, like John said, Jimmy was definitely part of that. Like Jimmy created part of our culture. He created part of the spirit of the band. And so, yeah, I think he was a member.
Yeah, I mean, especially during the Fight the System era, like he was as much a member of the band as anybody else. I mean, he got the same per diem. He got the same pay for the most part. So, I mean,
he grew dreads.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of work. It wasn't just like, I mean, he got the tour books together way before we had phones that could tell us where to go. We had our tour books that told us, the printed out maps to tell us how to get from one place to the other. And I mean, Jimmy put a lot of work in. So, I mean, Andy was my roommate forever, still one of my best friends. Absolutely. So he was Jimmy Rocket. I mean, he got his own page in the CD booklet for that album. So it was awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
Adam, I would probably put it this way. Like, look how many drummers we went through, but Jimmy Rocketship was always there.
And he tried out on drums, but he did not.
He did.
Yeah, he did. He tried hard, man.
He
Make
tried
sure you write that
hard.
down. He tried
very hard. I can honestly say we wouldn't have made it through like our being stranded in California if Jimmy wasn't there. Like, because Jimmy's like he's a mover and a shaker. He can get things done. He's not scared to ask for something and be denied for it. It's like he asked, the worst they can say is no. It's like always. Right. So he had a way of making things happen. So, but yeah, he was definitely a member of the band.
Well, so after Fight the System, his presence, would kind of take more of a back seat. He would kind of be more behind the scenes from that point on. But it should be noted that Jimmy has gone on to be a successful touring manager for several famous bands, including Paramore, Linkin Park, and most recently Halsey. So
Yep.
There's another Squad connection that went on to find mainstream success. So throughout 1998, you keep touring, you keep building your fan base, you host the G-Rock TV show, which you would go on to do a total of 3 times. And I'm still waiting for that wrestling match between you guys and Jesse and the Rockers.
Jesse and the Rockers. Jesse and the Rockers.
They were no shows. What can you do, man? You know, we were ready.
That's right. That's right. So you're featured on the cover of HM magazine for the first time. Things keep going well for you. And then Jason decides to leave the band. So I know you kind of already mentioned, differences of personalities between you guys. Would you say that's why he left, or what was that like? Why did he decide to leave the band?
I think he was doing Muchacho Vivo at the time. I think he was looking just to play maybe a different style of music. I mean, he probably felt it as much as we did, that we weren't like, although we got along, it wasn't like we were like brothers or anything like that. So not that we disliked each other. It was just two different, like we said before, 2 different types of personality. I think that the big, like, Get Up Kids, Mineral kind of thing was happening, coming on at that time. And he was looking to play more music like that and work on his own record label. And I understood it. So
yeah,
I don't blame him for it. And I still have a lot of fond memories, like, from that era, And it seems like it was a lot longer than it was, but when you really think about it, it was only like a year and a half, maybe, roughly, something like that. But yeah,
Sure.
It left us where we're going, looking for another drummer.
That's right. That's right. So 1999 is quickly approaching, and this is when you start transitioning away from ska, and you add guitarist Adam Garbinski to the band. But before we get to all that, I did want to ask about lyric inspiration. So lyrically, the ska era of the band, was explicitly Christian, biblical, theological. Was that content inspired from your personal devotions? Was it stuff you were just hearing and learning from church, or a mixture of both? What was your inspiration for those things?
I think that, we were believers and we were singing from that point of view. And of course, this whole idea with, like, when Tooth and Nail first kind of came on the scene, this idea of, like, people who are Christians or who believe in Christ that can make music that is, like, artistically viable, that maybe can even exist on its own outside of, like, I guess what was a burgeoning, like, sort of Christian scene or whatever. But of course, John and I were also very influenced by, like, a lot of straight edge music, like a lot of, like, Youth of Today, or Gorilla Biscuits, especially Gorilla Biscuits, and 7 Seconds and Minor Threat. I think those are probably our 3 biggest influences: Gorilla Biscuits, 7 Seconds, Minor Threat. And then, of course, Op Ivy is what brought the ska in. We're like, dude, what if we just, like, I don't know if we even talked about it.
We just kind of combined it.
Started, like, working elements of that, that hardcore straight edge with, like, ska influences, like Op Ivy stuff. And so, a lot of those bands, like 7 Seconds and Gorilla Biscuits, Minor Threat, they sing about their beliefs. So to us, it was just like, oh, well, yeah, we'll just sing about our beliefs, and, like, of course, we're bringing a certain Christian worldview to it. But honestly, man, I think, like, a year or so ago, I sat down and listened to, like, all the old 7 Seconds stuff again, and I was like, dude, we borrowed so much from these guys. Like, I would just listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, like, this is, like, you can tell this is, like, the thing that planted the seeds for early Squad stuff. So to us, I don't think it was, like, weird. It's like, because most of the bands that we were into sang about what they believed, and hence, like our first album, What I Believe. But yeah, I would definitely say that's where we're coming from, because those bands that we were so influenced by were definitely, like, you wear your heart on your sleeve, you say what you mean. There's not a whole lot of, like, painting pictures to be interpreted. There's a whole lot of just, like, declaration to be heard and felt.
So before we leave this era, Any standout songs for you guys from Fight the System? Anything, any personal favorites?
I mean, I love playing "Fight the System," the song. It's a great song. I love "Parental
I
Guidance."
think like
I love
yeah, Kevin's song.
Kevin's song's great.
There's a little song called "Time Goes By."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, time goes by is great. It's so hard to pull off live these days. So
It's-
I was gonna give you credit for coming up with the root notes for it on an acoustic guitar.
right here,
And
son. The
then
root notes. John made it magic. I think also when I listen back to Fight the System, I mean, I like listening to that album more than I do What I Believe, majorly probably because of production, but also I think just some of the songwriting and just the playing on it, especially like the drums, is just like really fun to listen to. So shout out Jason Michael Anderson. But like I love listening to things like dude, what's the song? Days of My Youth, where it's just like blistering,
Yeah.
like dong, 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 like that stuff just like gets me going. Or what's the other one that I always like? I just love listening to it, and I'm like Days of My Youth. And then what's the John? What's the one that's like dong 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 dong? Oh, that's Days of My Youth. That's like the breakdown.
That's the breakdown in Days of
Same
My
song.
Youth.
Same song. And then there's
Yeah,
another one. Oh,
that bass line is so fun.
Forever Young is
yeah.
really fun to listen to. Dun, 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 dun. But yeah, I enjoy that album actually. There's like quite a few songs on there that I would like, maybe if we ever have time to make a longer set list one day, if we do a reunion, maybe just have a whole punk section where we can bring out more of those songs.
So 1999. This is what I call the transition to rock phase of the band. This is the era where you add a second guitarist, Adam Garbinski of Speedy Delivery and Huntington's fame, and you totally move away from your previous ska sound. Okay, so when in the Squad timeline was it decided that you were going to move in the more rock and roll, glam rock direction? Was that a conscious decision, or were the songs just coming out naturally?
I think, Adam, honestly, it probably started with the anthem of Jimmy Rocketship. Like if you listen to that song and you hear that dun 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 dun, and I think that adding Adam, we thought like, oh, we can be more of a straight ahead like rock or punk band. And when it first, like if you listen between the two albums, I mean, if you listen to Fight the System and then the next thing you hear is Bombs Over Broadway, you're probably like, what the heck happened? But if you listen to the demos of songs from Bombs Over Broadway, then you can see how that transition was more of like a natural transition, because I think those two demos we cut, they're much more of a punk, more punk than rock, but definitely with those rock overtones with the riffs and different things like that, the change in vocal delivery and all that stuff. But yeah, I think the people who maybe hadn't heard us since Fight the System, when you hear Bombs Over Broadway, it is definitely a bit of a culture shock. But if you hear the demos, you're like, oh, okay.
Okay, so how early were you writing those songs for Bombs? Was Jason still in the band? Was it just after he left? And John, were you helping co-write the songs?
I feel like Jason was gone.
Yeah, he was gone.
And I think I feel like we wrote those the first couple songs. What was it? Apocalypse Now, and We Rule the Night. I feel like we wrote them with Jeff Irizarry, didn't we? I mean, I know that's who recorded the demos with us.
Yeah, I was gonna ask who was on those demos, because I didn't think it was Adam or Justin, right? It was
No,
it was Jeff Irizarry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then who was doing the lead parts? Was that
Brett Levinson
from
Tenderfoot and Dear
Ephesus.
Awesome. Yeah, so when you asked Adam Garbinski to join the band, I take it he knew he wasn't joining a ska band, right? I mean, you wanted him because he could play solos and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I wanted him because he was just an amazing performer and great guitar player, and
He
just
looked
brought the
cool.
energy. Yeah. Like, I mean, I never saw Speedy the Delivery necessarily play live, but we did that 1998, the summer of 1998. We did like a tour with, I think it was Halo Friendlies,
Yep.
Squad, and the
Huntington's.
Huntingtons. And Justin was playing drums for the Huntingtons too, I believe. Justin Garbinski.
Yeah, he was like
And
15.
yeah, and Adam and I told Jimmy, I'm like, hey, we need this guy in the band. And then Jimmy went and did Jimmy things. He just started planting seeds and like, hey, you should really be in Squad, you know. And then it worked out because Jimmy's, you know, good at what he does. He convinced Adam, like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So,
I think Adam was gonna go to college. Like he just graduated high school when he was doing that tour. And I think Jimmy said something like, why you want to go to college? Just come be in this band. They're about to sign to Tooth and Nail. Come be in this band. And Adam was young enough to believe him, I guess.
So one thing I loved about this era of the band is that you started palm muting all of the ska parts to the older songs. And it put like a whole new spin on those songs, a whole new interpretation. And it was just straight up punk rock and roll, you know? And it was like, who cares about ska anymore? You know, ska was over when Squad said it was over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was awesome.
you know what's funny about that? It's like when we did the first reunion show in San Francisco in 2017. Yeah, October of 2017. Like we got there before Jeff. And so we're discussing like, you know, we run like the songs that have no ska parts in them, and then we have no Jeff, like no one singing, so we're just kind of, you know, singing along in our heads. I'm like, okay, so let's do the old ones. And they're all old by this time, but okay, let's do the old ones. And I'm like, so you can do the palm mute thing? He goes, nah, man, I want to do the upstrokes. I'm like, okay. And we did it. I'm like, oh, they're the upstrokes. Yeah. And then I look, I'm like, I think it's great both ways, but it was cool to hear like, Adam's like, no, I want to do the upstrokes. And then him and Chris were on the upstrokes. I'm like, okay. Like we're gonna do it. I mean, it's not super clean, you know, it's kind of still distorted, but it wasn't the. So
yeah. I remember showing up that next day, and we got to like the punk section, the ska punk section, and we jumped into the first song, and we get into like what I thought was going to be the palm muted part, and there were the upstrokes. It was magical.
Okay, well, let's give a shout out to the fill-in drummers in
right.
1999.
Matt Morris.
Yeah.
Tex.
So
Tex.
when Jason left the band, you didn't let that slow you down in terms of touring, and so you had 3 different drummers filling you for you guys. First up was Matt Morris, also known as Tex or Tex Maverick, I think.
Tex Maverick.
Tex Maverick.
He was from the Dallas area, and he was also one of these guys, you know, even though he wasn't a member in the band, you treated him like he was. I remember one of the first shows that I saw with you guys, you know, there were promo shots or he was in them. You also had a t-shirt that he was on, t-shirt design, you know, so that's pretty cool. Then you had Jeff Irizarry, which was awesome. Jeff from Dear Ephesus, then Tenderfoot, and he'd go on to play for Gasoline Heart, and most recently for Peter Furler from the Newsboys.
Yes.
That's probably a pretty cool gig. He also played in a band called Von Ray briefly, which had some mainstream success. And then you had Dave Peterson from Blast of the Rocket Man and Huntingtons. There's some foreshadowing there because Dave would eventually become a full-time member of the band. My question is, were there talks during this time about these 3 drummers becoming full-time members, or was it always the arrangement that they were just fill-ins only?
I would say yes and no. I think with Tex, it was understood that it was like sort of like just a necessity sort of thing. He was like a kid. I mean, he was younger than us by a good bit of years, and he was totally into like the Descendants and then other like faster pop punk sort of stuff. But he did a really good job filling in for us, and he was just like the nicest kid in the world.
You'll never meet.
And you said,
I mean, he's one of the greatest people. He's so amazingly great. His family, like everything. It was,
and we did have like we did some photo shoots with him in it, and we put him on some shirts. But I do remember the time we were out in like Portland in the Pacific Northwest, and Brandon Ebel wanted to do a photo shoot of us because it was pretty clear we were about to join the Tooth and Nail family. And you've probably seen these photos, Adam, but it's just me, John, and Adam.
Right.
We asked Tex not to be, and I remember he took that kind of hard, but man, you're doing a great job. We're so glad you're on this tour, but we're going to find a permanent drummer, and you're not the guy, basically. And okay, but we did ask Irizarry to join the band. Because remember, Irizarry told us no, like in the nicest way ever, because he's like the nicest guy ever. And then we hired Dave for the fall tour, and that was the first time we really ever played with Dave. We hired him basically as a hired hand. He fit in well with the band. He looked good with the band. But I think I remember Dave making Jimmy angry at the end of the tour. Do you remember this, John? And Jimmy paid Dave in quarters. The greatest story ever. Went to the bank. They got the entire amount of money, like hundreds of dollars. We agreed to pay Dave, and he paid him in quarters. It was the greatest thing ever. Dave was kind of abrasive, especially on that tour.
It's funny too.
Heads a few times.
It's funny too because remember, like there was some point in the band where we were gonna add Dave as a guitarist. He was gonna come and play guitar. Okay.
So that happened actually at Cornerstone because we had added Justin.
Yeah, and
then Dave was like, "You need a second guitarist," and we were thinking about Chris at the time. And Dave was like, "I've changed, man. You remember this?" Like he's
yes.
I'm not as like annoying as I used to be, and different things like that. And we're like, I don't know. Somehow, I don't know. It all blurs together, honestly. And then, then Justin,
it all works out that Chris is on guitar and Dave's on drums.
To be in the band.
So yeah, John, you alluded to, maybe you guys were waiting on Adam's brother, Justin, to be able to join the band. And so he eventually joins, and he would be your drummer during the Bombs Over Broadway era. Justin had also been in Speedy Delivery with Adam, a phenomenal punk band in Philadelphia. And this is what I call the beginning of Squad 5 becoming a super group, or maybe a mini super group at this point. But basically, you have these two brothers who come with their own notoriety, from Philly, and they're wanting to join up with you. What was that like for you guys? Were you conscious that you were building a super group, so to speak?
I don't think we were. It's amazing how much we weren't conscious for. No, it was just Adam, had joined the band, and Justin was one of the best drummers out there. The only thing in the way of him being in the band was his age and the fact that he was still in high school. So when he kind of, pushed through high school and graduated early and was clear to sort of like pursue something other than high school, I think it was only natural that he was going to come in the band, because we, especially Justin and I, had formed a pretty good friendship on that Huntington's tour. And Adam and Justin, of course, are brothers. And so it just felt like, yeah, okay, this is what we're going to do. It is sort of strange, though, that Justin's such a good punk drummer. I mean, he's so good at the punk beat and just transitioning between different, styles and different tempos. And then he joins our band right at the moment as we're like slowing things down. But he's a phenomenal drummer. So, of course, what he played for us on that recording was played very well, because he's just a great drummer. He could play all styles, and he was just a kid. So I don't know if he fully knew what he was getting into, but I don't know if we so much thought of it as like a super group, as more just like, yeah, this seems like a natural transition.
Well, Jeff, I think you once remarked in an interview that you loved having the Garbinskis in the band because it gave the band a double brother dynamic, with you and John, and then Adam and Justin. And I think you called it a double brother attack, if I remember right, which I think is a pretty accurate description. But that lineup would not last long. And Squad would grow into an even bigger super group, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Now, at some point during this era, I think it was probably mid to late 99, it was announced that you were officially signing with Tooth and Nail Records, which was a huge accomplishment. And evidently it's what you guys had wanted all along, right? So congrats. And I think everyone was excited about that. Your fans were pumped about that. But something that surprised me recently on one of the podcasts was that Brandon Ebel, president of Tooth and Nail, said that when he signed you guys, he thought he was signing a ska band. And he thought y'all would be the next big punk ska band, and he did not want you to go glam rock. Were you guys aware of that? And did that cause any sort of tensions between you guys and the label?
That's not the way I recall it. I'm not questioning Brandon's honesty.
Nor do I.
Okay. So what's your guys' story?
The way I recall it is that Brandon saw us. We filled in for a few dates on the, what's it called, the Scalaluya tour or something. It was like 5 Iron, Insiders, and Supertones. Insiders couldn't do a couple of the Northwestern, Pacific Northwest dates, and so we took their place. Scamania, that was it. Scamania. And so we took over, and Brandon saw us play and just fell in love, because even when we were like a punk band, there was still a lot of like pomp and circumstance sort of to our delivery. There was a lot of, posturing, wearing the Cinderella or Guns N' Roses t-shirts, modeling the logo of the band after Poison or something like that. So even when we were like a punk band, there was still a nod and a wink to like sort of the music of the late 80s that we grew up with. And a lot of that was in our live show. And by that time we were with Adam, and we weren't really even scaing it up anymore. We were just palm muting everything. And so if he heard our albums, yeah, sure, maybe he thought we were a punk ska band, but it was based on him seeing us at that show, which is what he said, that we weren't really a punk ska band at that point. We were just more like a straight ahead punk band with, hard rock influences. And that's what he signed. I mean, I think he signed the live show. I still think, back in those days, we were one of the better live bands out there. And I'm not trying to be prideful about that. I just, I know certain things about me. I'm not a great singer, but I'm a great performer. And so someone once called me a rallier. They're like, you're a rallier. You can just rally people to a cause. And so I think that's what worked for me in a live setting, and what worked for our band. And I should say this, like, I'm very limited in my skills, but John, I was actually thinking about this the other day when I was thinking about the new stuff. It's like, I'm in a band with like the best guitar player and the best bass player I've ever known. Like Chris Klein and John Fortson are like the two most talented instrumentalists at their instruments that I've ever known. And I get to be in like a band with those guys and make music with those guys. But I will say that I think that Brandon fell in love with the live element, and a lot of the live element had to do with like a hard rock or a gutter punk, not gutter punk, I guess gutter glam sort of delivery.
Glitter punk.
So that's not the way I recall it. I will say this. I will say that I think the final Pecars, the album, when Brandon heard it, I think it did shock him. Like, I think that it was much more, 80s rock or 80s glam. And even, than he expected it to be. But I don't think he knew we were going to we hired like a hard rock producer, Dwayne Barron, who like slowed everything down, because that's what he produced. He produced hard rock albums. And so I really sort of wish we had gone with like more of a punk producer. But it is what it is. I just remember it differently. John says he does too. Yeah.
Like a good percentage of Squad fans that just love that record. They love it. Like, it changed my life.
Yeah.
I wish it was faster. I wish it was a little more grittier, but they wouldn't change anything. So, everyone has,
Right.
a lot of people it's like, it's my favorite one of all time. I'm like, okay. I'm like, glad it worked out for you. Like,
There you go.
Well, so yeah, you've already mentioned they put the two demo songs out on compilations, Apocalypse Now and We Roll the Night. Fan question. Here's the big one. Were there any more Bombs demos recorded? Or was it just those two?
I think it was just those two. Yeah, it was just those two.
Okay.
Yep.
Huh.
I think a lot of fans, have wondered, are there demos of other songs from Bombs that might still have that grittier, faster punk edge to it? Because those would be, pretty cool to hear. Well, I wanted to ask you about another song during this era. And I was watching a YouTube video of a Squad show, and to my surprise, you played a song that I'd never heard before. You introduced this song as "Bullet Through the Chest." And John, I sent you the link to it.
Oh yes, I am familiar. Yes,
you told me it was about the falling out with Bulletproof, but you never recorded it. And so my question is, why didn't it make the cut? And were there other songs from this era that you never recorded?
Not that I remember.
Yeah, I would never remember that song. But yeah, I think that one, John, wasn't there one called like Partisan Rock about like Red Dawn? Do you remember that song?
There was all about the movie. It was all about the movie Red Dawn. There was a song called Partisan Rock.
Yeah.
So Partisan Rock and Bullet Through the Chest. Those are the two.
Okay.
Partisan Rock was awesome. It was,
right.
But it was all about the movie Red Dawn.
Why did that not make the cut?
It was very niche. Who would have gotten it?
Yeah,
it was
totally. It was only about.
It was only people that loved the movie Red Dawn.
Oddly enough, yeah, we used to do things like that. Like we'd get obsessed with movies, and we wouldn't maybe not necessarily write a song about it. Like we took the movie Red Dawn on tour with it, the original Red Dawn kids.
Oh gosh, I was just about to tell that story. It's so good.
All right. Yeah. We rented it from Blockbuster Video in Savannah, Georgia. And then, I should say my dad, I guess we rented it with my dad's account. And we took it on tour with us. And we're just like, no one will notice. And then my dad called us in San Diego and was like, do you have the movie Red Dawn with you? We're like, yeah. It's like, we owe them $90-something. Like, what? But anyway, and then another thing we wrote that song Partisan Rock, and then we used there. John, do you remember when we played in New Mexico, and the only things we said between songs were lines from the movies Young Guns 1
Young
and
Guns
and Young Guns 2.
Yeah. That was the only thing we would say between
no other
songs.
banter. Just quotes from that was on the Living Sacrifice tour. We only quoted Young Guns in between songs.
That was the
only. It was so ridiculous.
It was one of the most brilliant things we've ever done. Anything in between songs wasn't how you guys doing. It was only quotes for Young Guns 1 and Young Guns 2 the whole time.
Yeah. So I read online. This was also a Wikipedia thing, but that there were talks of Squad doing a split EP with the Deadlines. It was on the Deadlines Wikipedia page, and said there was a rumored split EP between you guys and the Deadlines.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. I mean, we did tour those guys.
Right.
But yeah, I don't remember that.
I would remember that. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Why not?
Okay, well, so you finally go in to record Bombs Over Broadway, and you get to do so with producer Dwayne Barron, who had done a lot of work, for Alice Cooper, Motley Crue, Poison, Cinderella. And so
Quiet Riot.
There you go. I would have thought he would have been right up your guys' alley for back then. I mean, you guys were excited about that, right? Or not?
Yeah, we were definitely excited. It
Yeah.
just I don't think we realized how much of a change of pace or how foreign it was going to sound once we kind of did it that way. Like you don't listen to those albums from back in the 80s and think like, wow, this seems like slow. But when you're coming from like a punk ska band and the next thing you do is this thing, and you just did 2 demos of songs that are going to be on this album that really had much more energy and just, you know, just, I don't know, kicked ass a little more than this album does. And so I don't think we realize, and when you're in the process, sometimes you can't really see it, you know, like when Dwayne started having to slow things down, we're just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But looking back on it now, it was just like, no, we should have been like, no, you know, we're a punk band. We want to do like a gutter glam sort of thing, but we want it to be more punky than it is rocky. But I think at the time we sort of convinced ourselves that like, oh yeah, we should make a hard rock album, like not a punk album.
Yeah.
Almost like trust the process. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Right. Did he know that you guys were a Christian band? Did he know you were formerly a ska band? I'm sure that would have been a unique experience.
Yeah, we talked. We actually had some conversations with him. Yeah. I mean, he was actually a really nice guy.
Yeah, no, Dwayne was cool. Like he was really cool. And
he was a great guy.
He was sort of like on his own sort of spiritual journey, and we actually had some really cool conversations about, you know, the Christian faith and other faith systems and other, you know, I guess other pathways that he sort of explored. So now some really cool conversations, not like a ton, but like some really cool conversations with him for sure. But yeah, I think he was well aware that like we were coming from like this Christian scene. And, you know, we were making this album on like a Christian quote label, although To The Nail at the time was sort of, you know, starting to earn its reputation as a label that existed both in and out of the Christian market.
Right. So the CD comes out in August of 2000. And just for the record, you know, as a fan of Squad 5-0, it was the coolest thing ever. You know, I mean, you guys kept getting better, kept putting out better albums. Your popularity kept rising. And, you know, there were some fans that were upset that you switched styles. You eventually stopped playing all of your, you know, old ska stuff. And it's become common in recent years for people to criticize the production of Bombs and, you know, the too slow, energy was lost, things you guys have already alluded to. And so, John, I take it that you agree with Jeff on that and some of those critiques?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's a bad sounding album. It's just, it doesn't have like the energy, like the energy that we have live. And I don't know if we've ever been really able to capture that. You play the songs from what I believe live, they sound awesome. You listen to it on the CD, definitely like big step up with Fight the System, and those songs sounded awesome. I think that captured some of the energy. And then we kind of like took a little, I guess, step back in a way because we should have never been that slow. But I think it's a good sounding record. I'm not a fan of the tempo, I guess, is what I should say.
Gotcha. Well, again, as a fan, let me say, you know, I totally get where you're coming from. And I totally get that the energy levels were different between the album and the live show. But I actually thought that was kind of the unique thing about it. I kind of liked that you didn't just get, you know, what was on the album when you went to a Squad 5-0 show. You got the more raw energy, you know, a different interpretation, maybe, so to speak, of the songs, which I thought was really cool and one of the unique things about Squad. And really even the transition, you know, going into the glam rock stuff, to me, that seemed totally normal. And it seemed totally natural because even when you were ska, that was your whole gimmick. You know, you were always joking that you were a glam rock band. You were covering you know, Poison and Motley Crue on the albums. You know, you were doing all that stuff, and so I never really understood why fans were upset. To me, it just seemed like the natural progression of the band. You know, so when Bombs comes out, it's like that record had to be made. You know. and how it happened is how it had to happen, you know?
I just wish I just wish it had a little more energy. Like if there was a little
Yeah.
more like pick up the tempos, because I think the songs are cool, you know,
Yeah.
and definitely the lyrical content's a little bit different. But if it was a little bit like faster, a little bit grittier, not so
Like more like
smooth
the
and
demos.
polished. Yeah, not so smooth and polished, but like I said, sonically, I think it sounds cool. Like when those first like sonic boom things hit at the beginning of the record with Bombs Over Broadway, I'm like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But you know, you can't recreate that live. Even when we played the songs live, I feel like there's just so much energy to those songs, you know. So I don't know.
More like the demos.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Gotcha.
More like it. We're gonna
Well,
record them again and call them more like the demos.
It's gonna be called Bombs Over Broadway.
More like the demos.
More like the demos.
there you go.
More like the demos.
Any particular songs from Bombs that you are particularly
Dude.
fond of?
Bombs Over Broadway.
Yeah, Bombs is a great song. Such a great
Apocalypse Now.
song. I mean, I love We Rule the Night.
We Rule the Night. It's so much fun to play live. Renegade's kind of fun.
Renegade's a good song. Yeah, that's a lot of fun to play.
What's the one?
I'm not
I'm
not a big fan of Lost Boys, which is another song written after a movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Movie themes all day.
It just sort of sounds like we're saying lots of boys, like lots of
boys,
lots of boys.
lots of boys. It does
man.
Oh,
totally.
It's unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
I know the one I was thinking of. They'll Never Take Me Alive.
Yeah, Never Take Me Alive is a great song.
Kind of a cool
It's
song.
good. I think it's just too long. It's like one verse too long.
Yeah.
If we cut out one verse, it would be like, but it's a great song though. The riff is great. And all the cuts. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, so I have to ask about the lyric explanation sheet that came with Bombs inserted into the CD.
We just can't catch a break, can we?
Yeah. Jeff, I know you weren't too excited about doing that. That's something the label made you do.
Oh man, that was
but here's my question. Here's my question. How truthful were those explanations? Like
they were.
When you were writing the songs, were you conscious of those things, or did you kind of deduce those meanings?
I mean, maybe on some level, but I also felt like I was trying to like push it towards where they wanted it to be. And actually, we weren't even the first to have to do that. The Deadlines had to do it before us.
Right.
And I think like when that happened with the Deadlines and that Family bookstores or whoever the big player in the game was, I think it was mainly Family bookstores, saw they can kind of have that pool. Like they actually like tooth and nail had to have an artist do that anything that was remotely sort of like not explicitly like Jesus, rah, 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 had to like have some type of explanation to it. Or if it used some type of imagery like the Deadlines used, death, right? And Squad on Bombs was using like, you know, violence. I don't even know if it was violence, just I guess dystopian societies to talk about, you know, different things that like people or Christians or young Christian kids couldn't be trusted to like get this stuff and actually like decipher it on their own or form their own opinions about what it's saying. They actually had to be told what it's saying, which is sort of weird to me. But at any rate, I would say that there is truth in the lyric descriptions, but I was very much aware of who the audience was I was writing for. And it wasn't the kid that was buying the CD. It was the executive at Family bookstores that was going to have to approve it before they put it on their shelves. Which, by the way, in the future, we have a great story about that lyric sheet when we get a little further down the line. I'll save it.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of like reading the gospel and then having to have like a cheat sheet to go along with it. You're supposed to listen to the music and get what you get out of it, but no,
Sure.
you can't have it here unless we have an explanation of like, what does this actually mean to you?
Right.
But every listener is supposed to get out of it what their own personal meaning is. So it's kind of
Yeah.
defeats
Well,
the
let's-
purpose.
So, all right. So soon after Bombs was released, you added another guitarist, Chris Klein, from the band 121, which was
Yep.
another one of my favorite bands. It was totally awesome when you added Chris. Chris is a phenomenal guitar player, and he took everything to the next level for Squad. You know,
Yeah.
Jeff, you had stopped playing guitar at some point live,
Yeah.
and so that left Adam with all the guitar work. And so when Chris was added, you know, it gave everything a fuller sound again. I guess one question I had was Chris always the choice for a new guitarist? And you've kind of already answered that because you said Dave Peterson was trying to get in on the game.
Yeah.
But other than him, were there any other guys in the running, or was Chris always your main dude?
I think it was always Chris. Like, you know, we,
Yeah.
of course, played with 121 many times, and like Chris is just an amazing guitar player. Plus, he looks awesome. I mean, he's like you. He still looks like he's like early 20s. But like he was just like, you know, and plus he was just so good, and he was goofy in like a great way and funny, you know, and not like, I don't know, you know, there's not a whole lot of ego involved with Chris. Like Chris knows he's good, but Chris isn't going to act like he knows he's good, if that makes any sense. But he, yeah, I think it was always him. I think we felt like he looked like he should be in the band, and he definitely had like the lead guitar chops to take us to a different level. And I think I discovered before we added, like you said, before we even added Chris, I discovered that it was way more fun not to play guitar on stage. There was way more stage to work with, way more audience interaction, and less to think about, you know, when you didn't have the guitar in your hand. And so, yeah, it was just a natural progression, you know, for like bands that we loved, you know, like the Rolling Stones and Guns N' Roses. They had two guitar players with distinct personalities that both added sort of their own, or even the Clash, you know, the Clash had two guitar players, though they both sang, but both of them brought a different kind of like voice, not just their, you know, their vocal voice, but also like the voice of their instrument to the group. And I think Chris definitely did that for us.
Jeff, do you remember what show it was when you decided you were never going to play guitar again?
I want to say, I don't remember exactly what show, but I remember it was the fact that like I broke a string and Jimmy gave me the backup guitar, and the backup guitar was out of tune, and I was just like over it, and I just threw it down and started singing. Were we in Myrtle Beach?
We were in Myrtle Beach. You do remember?
Yeah.
Yep. That's when they
Yeah.
picked you up and you were crawling on the ceiling.
Yeah.
We were
like
with World Against World. After the show, he goes, "I'm not playing guitar anymore." So Adam
Yeah.
held it down by himself for a while, and then we got Chris.
That's cool.
Yep. That's exactly it.
So from my perspective, Chris joining the band was the next step in your progression into
Supergroup.
supergroup.
I
You've
mean,
now got
yeah.
guys from Speedy Delivery and 121 in your band, which was just awesome. You know, and all my favorite bands were merging together into Squad 50. So it was great. So the lineup then was Jeff, John, Adam, Justin, and Chris, which happens to be the current lineup for the band, the 2021 lineup. But
Yeah.
soon after, Justin left the band.
Yeah.
You guys did not have great luck with drummers, it didn't seem. So,
Spinal
you know,
Tap.
We're the Spinal Tap of Christian rock.
yeah, that's right. So what was Justin's reason for leaving the band?
He wanted to be a millionaire before he was 30.
Oh,
I'm not lying. He wanted to go back to college. That's not a
did.
joke. That's what he
He
told
did.
us. He wanted to be a millionaire before he was 30.
So he wanted to make money. Okay,
Yeah.
and you can't do
Yeah.
that in
Yeah.
Squad 5 right?
I think Justin was like,
apparently not.
yeah, I think that, he was a kid. I mean, he really was. I think the whole time he was in the band, he was a teenager. And yeah, I think I remember one conversation I had with him. We had played a show in like a frat house at Liberty University. And I just remember, I thought it was an awesome show. It was fun.
It was a great
And
show, man. They had a homemade tree swing. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was freaking awesome. But Justin was just like, this is not what like I imagined we would be doing. I imagined a band grows, like, they start playing in bigger venues and we're playing like frat houses. And I'm like, we're playing wherever anybody will let us play, man. That's kind of what we do. We play where we can play. And I think that he was just sort of like had a different idea about where things would progress to, and they didn't progress there. And I think that, he wasn't in love with, touring and being in the band and things like that. And I think, he had met a girl that he was really in love with, and actually they're married now. So it's the real deal, like 4 kids together. And I think he just, he wanted different things, kind of like what happened with Guy to begin with. Guy just sort of wanted different things. And Justin was sort of the same way. He just sort of wanted different things. And he decided to leave the band and go back to school and pursue life in that arena. And
gotcha.
And it was fine. Like, we were still real good friends with him, and we understood, sort of his decision. But it did put us back in drummer limbo.
There you go. And so
Yeah.
David Peterson would be your next full-time drummer, and he would last until the band's breakup. And Dave had been, a fill-in for you guys before, and he came on pretty quickly, as I remember, after Justin left. So was he kind of just the next natural guy, or were there others in the running?
No, I think it was Dave.
It was only Dave. Yeah, it was only Dave.
I think by that time, we were all a good bit older. John and I are 5 years older than the other guys, Dave, Adam, and Justin. I think they're all 1980 babies, and we're 1975. But yeah, by that time, David mellowed out a good bit. He really was, sort of crazy on that 120, or not the 121, on the Living Sacrifice tour. And he did butt heads, like, not only with Jimmy, but with other people. And but he had really grown up in the year since. What are we talking, like 2-3 years since then? And he really wanted to be the guitar player. And when we went with Chris, I think that, like, he wasn't like totally disheartened. He had done a stint in the Huntingtons and stuff like that. And when it came time for a drummer, it just made sense. I mean, he'd played with Blaster the Rocket Man and Blaster the Rocket Boy before that. And with the Huntingtons, and we knew he was a great drummer because we'd already played a tour with him, and we knew he had the chops to play whatever we wanted to play. And so, yeah, I think it was the only natural choice for us.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Dave was from Blaster the Rocket Man, another legendary Christian punk band, and he was one of the primary. He was one of the primary songwriters for Blaster too. So yeah, when Dave joined the band, the supergroup status was now complete. You now had an all-star lineup of Christian punk's best musicians and songwriters in your band.
We really did.
Squad 5-0, I think that's a huge deal. At that point, Squad could not be stopped. At least that's how it seemed. Did you see it that way? Did you feel that way? Did you feel like, all right, now we're unstoppable?
Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like I think I definitely felt like we had the unit that we were going to sort of ride this thing out with. Like, whatever Squad became or didn't become, it was going to be these 5 guys.
There would be no more members. That was it. Gotcha. And it was awesome. I mean, it was a total, like, conglomeration of, like, even though Jeff and I are twins, but like 5 totally different personalities that just seemed to like at one time just click. So I knew that if anyone left, that would probably be the end of the band, and no foreshadowing.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Follow the narrative.
So of course I have to mention about a year after the release of Bombs, 9/11 would happen.
Yeah.
Which would cause some controversy with the album cover with the Twin Towers and the bomber planes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tooth and Nail didn't actually change the artwork, did they? I think they just put a sticker over the.
They put
jewel
a
case.
sticker on. Yeah, they put a sticker over the cellophane on the jewel case.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Right.
And they sent stickers to stores that already had the album.
So before we move on, I've always wanted to ask you if you ever viewed yourselves as rock and roll trendsetters in the Christian scene, because that's how I've always viewed you guys. I think if you think about it, you transitioned into more of the rock and roll thing, and then other bands did too. You've got the Deadlines, Goaty Hook, even bands like Fillmore and Lugnut were kind of jumping on that bandwagon. And not just musically, but fashion. You guys started dressing a certain way, then everybody was wearing bandanas and big aviator glasses. And, to me, it just always seemed like, oh, that's a Squad thing, and so how much of an influence do you think you had on that, if any?
I feel like maybe the most oblivious guy ever. I don't know if I ever thought we had any influence on any of that stuff.
I just felt like
I don't know.
just the way that everything was going. I think it was just the thing that people started doing. Maybe we did it first. I don't know. We probably didn't. I mean, we were just borrowing from other bands that we listened to, like Hanoi Rocks, and
trying to be dirtier, like a dirtier looking version of like.
I mean,
Hanoi Rocks.
I'll tell you this: I'll never wear leather chaps again.
Oh gosh, that's all. I think I wore. Did you have leather pants for a while too, John?
I had leather pants too that I bought in Boston.
I wore leather pants.
You had green leather
got yours
pants
from like a store. I think I got mine from the Gap. No, I think I wore them once and I was like, never again.
It just sucks to your skin. It's terrible.